For those of you who don't know me, I'm Scott Pearce. I've had the honor of being first Vice President of FCM the past year, and the past 2 months I've taken over as interim President. And on Sunday, if all goes well, you'll elect me President. So it's an absolute honor for me, but not the title, just being your President. I'm so proud to be one of you, municipal leaders from across this country that go above and beyond the call of duty every day. Give yourselves a hand, please. I know for many of you, you're away from home, you're away from your families, your jobs, and for some of our friends here today, you're here even though at home there's wildfires and struggles. So thank you so much for being here. Can we give a round of applause for our friends from Western Canada, please? I have the important pleasure to introduce our first political keynote of the weekend. The first time that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke at our annual conference was back in 2013, about 6 weeks after he won party leadership. He's been a great partner attending this event that brings together the municipal order of government. So thank you to him for the past 10 years of support. We're very happy to welcome him back today, and we're looking forward to his perspectives on how to strengthen the federal municipal partnership as we all work together to support Canadians. The recent budget contained measures that FCM warmly welcomed, including new investment in urban, rural, Indigenous housing strategy, responding to a long-standing FCM priority. FCM also welcomed the recent launch of the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund, an important sign of progress in the national effort to improve housing supply across the country. And we are dedicated now to that work moving forward to ensure it is streamlined and accessible. These strategies are good news in our push on the big issues. Nous savons que lorsque les dirigeants municipaux et fédéraux travaillent ensemble, ils peuvent résoudre les plus grands problèmes tout en stimulant l'économie, en renforçant les collectivités et améliorera la qualité de vie partout au pays. Les dirigeants municipaux ici présents, unis sous la bannière de la FCM, sont impatients de poursuivre cette collaboration essentielle et de franchir les étapes vers un avenir meilleur pour nos collectivités. Étant originaire d'une petite municipalité rurale du sud-ouest du Québec, je souhaite bien, Monsieur le Premier ministre, continuer de collaborer avec vous et avec votre gouvernement au cours de la prochaine année, et aussi vous démontrer comment nos collectivités grandes et petites peuvent s'associer au gouvernement fédéral. Je pense que c'est pour la première fois que vous l'entendez, celle-là. Maintenant, je vous demande de tous applaudir très chaleureusement le très honorable M. Justin Trudeau.
Good morning. Je suis très heureux d'être ici en personne avec vous. Comme Scott l'a dit, j'ai participé à tous les congrès annuels de la Fédération canadienne des municipalités que vous avez organisés depuis 2013. Mais ça fait depuis 2019 que je me suis pas joint à vous en personne. Ça me fait donc vraiment grand plaisir d'être ici et de retour. Je tiens à remercier Scott Pearce d'avoir accepté de diriger cette organisation. Scott, même si ça fait moins de 2 mois que tu es en poste, je sais que tu es fier de représenter le Québec, les francophones et les petites communautés. Merci pour ton leadership. I want to begin by taking a moment to recognize all the mayors in Western Canada and the North whose communities have been affected by wildfires. Thank you for everything you're doing to keep people safe. I visited affected areas in Alberta last week and saw firsthand what people are going through. Got to thank the members of the Canadian Armed Forces for stepping up, but mostly got to see Canadians at their very best, people there for each other in times of difficulty, and know that all Canadians stand with you during these difficult times. For almost a decade, actually for a decade now, I've made a point of showing up at every FCM annual conference, and I always will. Because the work municipalities do is so important. Now, all of you remember that the previous federal government didn't get that. But I know that you're on the front lines of delivering for Canadians. Everything from maintaining roads and public transit that gets people to work and school every day, to the social work of helping feed and house the most vulnerable people. There is so much that you do. And we need to be partners in it if we want to truly serve people in the best possible way in these challenging times. It has been and remains important to me that we build a strong, continuing relationship where we meet regularly. Because with that comes a level of trust, where we can be direct and honest with each other. Bien des choses ont changé au fil des ans, et aujourd'hui, le rythme des changements s'accélère. Plus que jamais, les citoyens s'attendent à ce que leur gouvernement prenne des mesures ambitieuses et concrètes pour obtenir des résultats. Pendant la pandémie, les Canadiens se sont inquiétés pour leur santé et leur emploi. On a donc financé le programme de relance sécuritaire afin que les provinces et les territoires puissent collaborer avec les municipalités pour protéger la population. Les gens veulent être en sécurité dans leur communauté. Ils sont inquiets par rapport aux crimes et à la violence par arme à feu. C'est pourquoi notre gouvernement a interdit les armes de style assaut et a gelé le marché des armes de poing. La semaine dernière, la Chambre des communes a adopté le projet de loi C-21, la loi de contrôle des armes à feu la plus majeure depuis une génération, et on va continuer notre travail ensemble pour garder nos communautés et nos rues sécuritaires. Les gens sont aussi inquiets concernant les changements climatiques et les conséquences des changements climatiques, comme les inondations, les feux de forêt et les ouragans plus sévères que jamais. C'est pourquoi notre gouvernement s'assure que des programmes comme le Fonds d'atténuation et d'adaptation en matière de catastrophes restent en place pour protéger la résilience de nos communautés et de nos infrastructures face aux catastrophes naturelles et climatiques. C'est aussi la raison pour laquelle on a lancé la stratégie nationale d'adaptation. Mais l'une des préoccupations principales des Canadiens sur laquelle je veux m'attarder aujourd'hui, c'est l'augmentation du coût des logements. C'est un problème que le gouvernement fédéral ne peut pas résoudre seul. On doit le résoudre ensemble. The enormity of the housing challenges felt by every one of us in this room, no matter where you're from. Housing affordability is no longer a Vancouver or Toronto problem. It's no longer just even an urban problem. It's a problem in all of our communities. Young people and families are being pushed to leave their cities. This is putting new pressure on smaller and smaller communities, driving up their housing costs. And seniors on fixed incomes everywhere are struggling. We need to be thinking about the kinds of towns and cities we want, the kind of country we want. Because without sufficient housing in our communities, our economies are held back. Since 2015, we've helped nearly 2 million families and individuals get the housing they need. And Canada has increased our social housing stock after decades of no growth and even declines. We're doing this through programs that create housing for vulnerable people, including those experiencing homelessness, like the Rapid Housing Initiative. The first two rounds of the RHI exceeded expectations and are on track to create more than 10,000 units instead of the 7,500 initially expected. That includes more than 3,300 units to support women and more than 4,200 units to support Indigenous peoples. With round 3, this program will continue to deliver because we're working directly with you, directly with municipalities. Just this Tuesday, Minister Justin announced funding for affordable housing in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. And then on Wednesday, funding was announced for hundreds more units in Hamilton. But even more housing is needed everywhere, a lot more. On a besoin de partenaires motivés dans le secteur privé, dans le secteur à but non lucratif et dans tous les ordres de gouvernement. La stratégie nationale sur le logement a permis d'obtenir des résultats pour les Canadiens, mais on doit poursuivre sur cette lancée. L'accès au logement semble être hors de portée. Ce n'est pas bon pour les familles, pour notre économie ou pour nos communautés. Et vous connaissez aussi bien que moi les conséquences quand les prix des logements sont trop élevés. Les infirmières, les enseignants et les travailleurs dont votre municipalité a besoin pour croître ne peuvent pas se trouver un logement convenable pour leur famille. Une personne qui veut établir une nouvelle entreprise doit s'inquiéter du fait qu'elle ne pourra pas recruter des travailleurs parce que le prix du loyer dans leur région est trop élevé. Et à mesure que votre économie se développe, les pénuries de main-d'œuvre s'accentuent. Mais est-ce que vous avez assez de logements dans votre communauté pour accueillir les nouveaux arrivants dont vous avez besoin? We need to increase the supply of housing. It's that simple. Our government wants to see housing construction double over the coming years. Now, no single order of government can solve this alone, but we're putting real dollars behind this target. In March, to eliminate barriers to new housing supply, we launched the Housing Accelerator Fund. Through the program, we will directly fund municipalities' action plans, with the boldest plans resulting in the most housing units, especially affordable units, being rewarded. It's a flexible and adaptable program that recognizes that municipalities isn't easy work. And we know that accelerating the housing pipeline comes with costs to you. That's why we're stepping up with $4 billion to be your partners in this work. Now that's pretty different from the approach the opposition talks about wanting to take. They want to pick fights with you, to bully you into what they decide for you while they cut funding and programs. Gatekeepers. That doesn't respect the unique needs of your communities or the complexity of the work ahead. It sure looks like the leader of the opposition hasn't learned very much since he sat in Stephen Harper's cabinet. We are taking a collaborative approach to addressing the housing crisis that treats you as partners, as we always have. But make no mistake, to meet the needs of Canadians, all of us, and especially all of you, are going to need to continue to step up. As I've told you many times, I also need you to help pushing provinces and territories, too. For houses to get built, we need you to confront head-on NIMBYism and be bold in your solutions. We need to see project timelines accelerated. We need to see zoning reforms and the missing middle housing. We need reductions in administrative and construction fees. We need more partnerships with nonprofits. We need to unlock underused land like brownfields and land near city centers, while also protecting those parks and green spaces that make our cities so livable. We need to keep our communities accessible to public transit, which means being strategic and aggressive in densification. I want to talk about that last piece for a moment, because where you build houses matters a lot. As you know, 2 years ago, our government made a historic investment in public transit. We're moving forward with permanent public transit funding. And we're now looking at how best this funding can be used to build more transit for Canadians, especially where it's needed most. And I want to emphasize 2 things on transit. 1, you can count on us for long-term, predictable funding to support your growing transit systems. And 2, access to full funding will rely on you coming to the table with concrete and ambitious commitments on how you're going to build more housing to go with more transit. That means that just like the Housing Accelerator Fund, the more ambitious your housing targets, the more generous we'll be able to be in partnering with you. And we know you can do it. We've seen some fantastic examples of innovation and ambition over the past few years. Since 2021, Calgary has converted 10 underused office buildings into residences, with the city working with developers to reduce red tape. Guelph just approved a new housing pledge to facilitate the construction of 18,000 new homes by 2031. Montréal travaille avec de nombreux partenaires pour construire et préserver des logements abordables, y compris dans les quartiers recherchés comme le Plateau. And here in Toronto, our government was really happy to see City Council recently voted in favor of legalizing multiplexes in all neighborhoods. Innovations like these unlock supply and keep our neighborhoods dynamic. But most importantly, they create the homes that Canadians need. C'est plus le temps des délais, des hésitations ou des demi-mesures. Personne ne peut fermer les yeux sur l'urgence de ce dossier. Que ce soit dans les plus grandes villes ou dans les plus petits villages, chacun d'entre vous a la capacité et donc le devoir de changer la situation. Chacun de vous détient des leviers essentiels. Plus vous êtes créatif, plus vous êtes audacieux, plus on va être à vos côtés et plus vos communautés vont croître. Canada is growing. Our economies and our communities are becoming stronger and more diverse. And the new investments we're making are reinvigorating cities and towns across the country. I'm thinking of places like Bridgewater, Surrey, Bécancour, Alliston, or particularly on my mind, St. Thomas, Ontario. It's about 2.5 hours west of here. I know, I was just there yesterday afternoon. St. Thomas is a proudly blue-collar Canadian town. For generations, a lot of people there worked at a major auto assembly plant. But under the previous government, after the last recession, the local plant closed. You all know, when a company leaves town, it hollows out communities. It means that workers don't visit the local lunch counters, that kids, soccer, and baseball teams lose their sponsors, that families move away. Well, earlier this year, we announced that Volkswagen has chosen St. Thomas to build their first ever overseas gigafactory. This massive facility will create thousands upon thousands of great jobs, and not just at the battery factory, throughout the community and throughout the surrounding region. Now, the Conservative leader didn't support this investment, but the local Conservative MP, and certainly Mayor Joe Preston, sure did. They understand just how transformative this investment is going to be for the people of Southern Ontario. And Volkswagen has made clear that they're not just setting up shop for the next decade. They plan to be in St. Thomas for the next century. This is the kind of long-term vision and long-term belief we need to have in our communities. And this is exactly the kind of thinking our government has put behind major investments. Des investissements pour renforcer les soins de santé et éviter la fermeture d'hôpitaux et de cliniques locaux. Des investissements dans l'apprentissage et la garde des jeunes enfants qui permettent aux familles d'économiser des milliers de dollars par année, qui donnent lieu à la construction d'installations et d'infrastructures dans vos communautés, qui créent des emplois locaux, qui aident les parents, particulièrement les mères, à bâtir la carrière de leur choix et qui donnent à la plus jeune génération de Canadiens le meilleur départ possible dans la vie. Et, comme dans le cas de notre investissement sans précédent de 180 milliards de dollars dans le plan Investir dans le Canada, l'objectif, c'est de faire croître notre économie, d'investir dans la croissance propre et bâtir des communautés plus inclusives en renforçant la classe moyenne à travers le pays. We've allocated billions through partnerships with provinces that have meant real benefits for municipalities. We've invested in over 4,200 public transit vehicles, including electric buses, light rail transit, and other projects that are cutting both pollution and congestion in our big cities. We've invested in new community and cultural centers, like the new Kwanlin Dun First Nation Community Hub that opened in Whitehorse last fall. A shout out to Whitehorse there you go. And we've invested in over 1,000 water and wastewater systems. Now, wastewater systems might not seem that sexy to people at home, but for those of us in this room, va-va-voom. I'll also point out that infrastructure like this underpins plans to build more housing. As we chart a course for the future of infrastructure in Canada, we're committed to remaining a steady partner. But we need to work together to make sure we're building well for the next generation. Our next long-term infrastructure plan will be revealed this fall, and like with public transit, I can share with you today that this funding will have very direct links to housing. J'aimerais justement revenir sur la crise du logement. C'est une crise qui découle d'une génération de sous-investissement. La crise du logement a placé une génération de Canadiens, particulièrement les milléniaux, face à une situation où ils pensent maintenant qu'ils ne pourront peut-être jamais s'acheter une maison ou élever leur famille, ce qui était beaucoup plus facile pour leurs parents et leurs grands-parents. C'est à ça qu'on devrait penser quand on considère des investissements à long terme, à la responsabilité que chaque génération porte de bâtir pour la prochaine génération. Coming out of the pandemic, our economy has had an extraordinary recovery, with job numbers staying strong for nearly 2 years now. The pandemic also laid bare a lot of issues. And these are things that our government and a lot of you have been working really hard to address, with real progress being made. Pierre Poilievre spends his time talking down Canada and pushing his brokenist perspective. But that's an awfully pessimistic and defeated way to look at the world and the work our communities have done to stay strong and rebuild. His only plan seems to be cutting programs and cutting investments. But as leaders, we face a lot of difficult choices every day. And as each of you knows, to lead is to choose. Well, let us choose to take action to put NIMBYism aside and say yes to new opportunities. Let's choose to build housing that will welcome in new people and new energy and new growth for our communities. Let's choose to keep people at the center of everything we do. Let's choose to build a Canada that works for all Canadians. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you, sir.
There we go. I surprised you with a big hand.